So we've talked on this channel about all the different types of dubbing out there in the world. There's a ton. I mean, MFC alone, we have a lot. If you saw that video, it took a long time to make because there's so many different dubbings for different jobs. I always think of them like tools for a job, and different tools need different techniques. So today we're gonna go through the 3 dubbing techniques for you to level up your fly tying and tie almost any pattern out there. Dubbing can be an incredibly frustrating material. We have an entire video about the top dubbing mistakes, and I know there's even more than we covered in there because it looks like such an easy material to use that we assume it's just going to be smooth sailing. I still stand by what I've said in the past, is that the problem is it looks too easy. You know, you watch a tutorial, you watch a professional fly tyer, you think, man, that looks pretty easy. It's the same as when I watch, you know, a cooking show and then go into the kitchen and need my fire extinguisher. Same type of thing. It looked easy. Sometimes things look a lot easier than they actually are. And I think dubbing is one of those. It's such a unique thing we're doing with our hands. We're teaching ourselves to do something totally different from what a lot of us have done in work. It's not typing on a keyboard. It's not working on a phone. There are certainly more techniques than we're going to cover today, but I think these are going to give you the most mileage. They're going to be the multi-tools, you know, that core set of techniques that'll let you tie the most amount of flies. There's some wild stuff out there and it's super cool. I would say start here, master these, and keep building. Always keep building on your skills and learning. That's what I love about this sport, is there's always something more to learn from other tyers, from the fish, you know, from, you know, the rivers. We're always, if you keep your mind open to what people are doing, to what people are showing you, or the fish are saying when they reject your flies, you can learn a lot. You know, I've said before, I'll say it again, be stubborn with this, you know, put time in, give it patience and lots of repetition, and you can do all these techniques. They're not super difficult, and you can tie some killer flies. First thing we're going to hit on is twist dubbing. This is it. This is the place to start if you're new or a seasoned tyer. Let's go through it from the beginning and just revisit all this, because it's always good to visit these foundational skills and see if we can pick up something new. I very much hope that you will share some tips if you've been given them from other tyers, or maybe you've come up with techniques on your own. That's what the comment section is down there for. It's always, I'm here to learn as well. So let's go through twist dubbing, which again is taking these fibers, these that we're working with, is either synthetic or natural, or even blended, and we're pulling fibers out, we're twisting them around our thread, and then we're applying them to the hook. You can build slender dry fly bodies, you can build buggy nymph bodies, you can build sexy streamer bodies, you can do all sorts of stuff with this technique, and that's why I think it is the core piece, the piece you cannot skip learning, because all the other stuff is going to be a lot easier once you manage this. So we're going to jump in right from the beginning and take you all the way through it. This is the one. This is where everyone in my mind should start. So to walk you through this, we're going to grab a 1X long nymph hook. Just want a hook that's sizable enough for you to see what's happening here, and fairly stout, so we can use some thread tension if need be. Thread, like dubbing, there's better choices sometimes. I think a great place to start, where I've started a lot of people, is just a 6/0 thread. Waxed, if you can get it, it will make a big difference. I've had some interesting conversations about wax. I think we probably overuse it, and there's ways to get around it. There's just a lot of downsides. It's a great tool for the right job, but you know, it's not right for everything. 6/0 black here. Again, 1x long nymph hook. And then we're going to use some MFC tailwater dubbing, which is a really friendly dubbing to use. It's a blended synthetic and natural. You've got rabbit fibers in there, rabbit fur, and then you've also got some great antron that you can pick out and make look really buggy. And then just the most subtle little chunk of flash as well. This is way too much dubbing. I know, and we've been talking a lot. We're going to talk more because I think it's very common for students to want to just grab dubbing and get working. This would be kind of a disaster. I'm actually gonna pull this apart once and then again twice. This is what I'm gonna start with here. I know it's a tiny bit. You can barely see it. You can always add more dubbing. You always can. Since I'm a right-handed tyer, I usually keep my scissors in my right hand, and then I manage my materials with my left hand. I'm going to tension the bobbin. You know, I've seen a lot of videos, and it's usually one of those things we skip over talking about. If you just went to go twist and there's no tension in your thread, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So I'm actually tensioning the bobbin. I'm not putting a ton of tension there, just enough so that that thread is not moving around a whole lot. Dubbing, I'm going to place on my left index finger, and you can see it's pretty well spread out. It's not a big clump. And I usually bring this to the back side, and then here I start my first roll. And I just did a teeny tiny roll, thumb moving towards the tip of my index finger. And I'm going to do that same thing again, but I'm going to bring the index finger back to meet with that first kind of that first indent on my finger there. And I'm going to just roll it. Same thing. And I'm going to move up and down on this material until I'm pretty satisfied with how that dubbing's on there. This is actually more dubbing than you probably need to start, especially if you're building a tapered body. Start with a small amount. One cool thing here is once you have a noodle, you can actually slide it up and down your thread. So here's what we're going to do. Since that's a little bit thicker, we're going to grab a really small amount, really thin, half of what we used before. And we're going to come in and we're going to use the same process. So backside of the index finger, or backside of the thread here, and I'm going to sandwich it there. And that's what's happening is I'm sandwiching the thread between my thumb and index finger and just twisting. And you always want to twist one direction. Back and forth is just going to get you a noodle that falls apart. So now we have a really thin noodle that I can slide, if I want, right up there. And I can slide this thicker piece to meet the thinner before we start to wrap. And I can start the back side of the fly with a really thin piece, working towards a thicker piece. Now this is obviously not a complete body here. If you want to try and dub everything in one noodle, go for it. I mean, you know, if you have the time for that, I think it takes almost no time to grab another chunk of dubbing, place it on your index finger, tensioning with my bobbin hand, bringing it to the back side, sandwiching between thumb and index, and twisting up and down. A lot more tension than you think. A lot of people under tension, and you know, it just kind of falls apart on them. Again, slide this up to meet the hook shank, and I can build that taper. I just stop when I run out, bring a little bit more. And I know it looks easy. It's going to frustrate you. We're teaching our hands to do something different. And I'm just rolling towards my index finger. Great. Add a little bit more. And I can go back and continue to build a nicely tapered body. I'm going to add just a little bit more. Finish this off. These blended dubbings are so friendly to use. You get kind of the best of both worlds. You get the flash, you get
the ease of use and the bugginess of the natural, and then just kind of that next step with the synthetic for durability. So there's your tapered body. I mean, look at that. That's perfect. I'm just going to do a little whip finish. And then tailwater dubbing, what I really like about it is you can leave it like that. If you're trying to build a little bit, not the buggiest nymph, some nymphs are a little bit more slender, but if you want, you can easily pick this stuff out. No problem. And great dubbing for scuds, great dubbing for any sort of buggy nymphs you have. Comb it out. Look at that. I mean, if this was a scud, I'd comb it down like that. You'd be in business. So I just like that extra movement, especially I do a lot of swinging of my flies at the end of a drift, and it almost gives it that soft hackle style movement. Did well. Maybe it didn't look right to you. Utility blade. Back and forth, slice through that thing. Boom, that's gone. Keep practicing. This is a great way to develop a skill, is just keep at it. Be persistent, be stubborn, isolate what you're trying to improve on. I do want to show you another one with a little bit different dubbing. We talked about that. I know I keep hammering on it. Different dubbings for different flies. This is MFC's special sauce dubbing. If you're tying smaller dry flies, I would go to this dubbing over the tailwater, over the chub dub, over dubbing. This is the easiest to get really, really fine dubbing. And it is truly wild how little you need. I know I keep saying it, but less. You could probably barely see that, and I probably could have used less there again. Let's see if I can use a little bit less on this next one. And don't be afraid to pull this stuff apart, Again, you can slide these noodles up and down. Just great. Get that really slender taper. And if things start to, this noodle's a little bit loose, I can unwrap and retwist it, tighten it up, get that really tight, nice body that we're all after. So that's the trick there, dry fly dubbing versus nymph dubbing. Use less, even less, and more tension. Don't rush this. You should have a noodle that's, barely perceivable. And I'd rather have that and keep reapplying to build up to that perfect taper than one big chunk and hope it goes right, because it's very difficult to subtract. That's twist dubbing. Grab some dubbing, grab some thread, grab a hook, and the almighty eraser here, the utility blade, and practice this skill, improve it, tie some better flies.
Well, if you've got twist dubbing down, we can jump to the fun stuff. I know twist dubbing, not the most exciting thing, but it's going to get used in your arsenal. Now that that's out of the way, let's pull some more tools out. Let's have a little bit more fun, a little bit flashier techniques. We're gonna first dive into dubbing loops, which I think is a misunderstood technique. I think it's just tough to visualize sometimes for folks, and for folks filming tutorials, sometimes it's more difficult to film because we're not working right at the jaws of the vise. So I'm gonna do my best to give you the best visuals possible so that you can learn this technique and tie some sweet buggy flies. First of all, why would I use a dubbing loop versus twist dubbing? That is an important question to ask anytime you're tying a fly. Why would I use technique A versus B? For me, I would use a dubbing loop if I want to add a large volume of material in a short amount of time, I want a buggy body, and I don't need quite as much thread control. Those three things are really tough to avoid with the dubbing loop. It is difficult to add small amounts of fiber. It is difficult to control it as much. And it is why we generally use it with larger nymphs and with streamers. So those are your two reasoning, you know, whether it's building a flashy body, you know, like great fly, love the Peanut Envy from Kelly. I build my bodies with a flashy dubbing, and I use a dubbing loop and spin it up, twist it, boom. It's very efficient, it's very quick. It kind of looks cool too. You know, I also use dubbing loops with buggy nymphs. We have large stoneflies here where I'm at, and I like to add some dubbing in there that I know I'm gonna pick out or comb out with Velcro or a dubbing tool, and I'm gonna wrap a lot of material on there knowing I'm gonna pick that stuff out. So that's why I would use a dubbing loop. In terms of what dubbing goes well with dubbing loops, that's another important question you have to ask, because you don't want to use your dry fly dubbing. I mean, you can, but your fly shop's going to love you because you're going to waste all of it. So I would use if it were me, I'd probably use a medium length dubbing, something that has some flash in it, some coarseness to it if you want flash or but think about, or at least look into what the dubbing is good for. I think maybe one of the most epic dubbing loop dubbings we have is SIMI seal. That's what we're going to be using. I mean, it's the right length. You can build, basically what you're building is a brush with your thread, and thread choice is kind of important here. So if you use too thin of thread, you hit that spin, maybe you're manually spinning it, thread's gonna break. It will happen to you at some point, I guarantee it. Take a deep breath, because most of the time you're at the spun point where you can grab it with hackle pliers or your hands and still work it. It's not a big deal, so don't panic. Use the right thread. I probably wouldn't use anything lighter than 6/0 or 140. So my preference is probably either going to a more robust 140, or even something that's you can use a gel spun that's a little bit stronger, and we'll get into that once we get rolling. But just wanted to hit on when to use it, what dubbing to use, and what thread to use for this technique before we hit the vise.
Tying with a dubbing loop is a ton of fun, and as long as you have the setup right, it'll come together pretty easy. We're going to use the Gallup's vertical eye streamer in a number 4. It's a great leech hook, and dubbing loops I think are perfect for if you're tying leeches. You can do bugger bodies, you can do so many things with this technique, as long as you're okay with the things I talked about there. Like, you have to have some material to play with. I'm just going to start my thread. I'm going to go to the midpoint here. This is, again, 6/0. You can use a thicker thread. I wouldn't go a whole lot lighter than 6/0, like I said, because you do end up running the risk of over twisting and breaking your thread. Step 1 in forming the loop, you got to use your hands. Okay, this is, again, a lot of fly tying is just getting comfortable manipulating things with your hands. I'm a right-handed tyer, so I'm gonna have the bobbin in my right hand. My left hand, I need to use my index finger, and that's gonna form this loop. All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull some thread out. There, I'm sure, is a great formula for how large and long a dubbing loop should be. I'm not so concerned about that as I am how much dubbing goes in it. I think this is something you learn a little bit with time. If you have to add a little bit more, or burn through some material, that's okay. The longer the loop, the more difficult it is going to be to manage. That's something to note. So don't overdo it, but it is nice. You don't have to worry about spacing everything out. We're gonna go for a 5 to 6 inch loop here. I'm going to insert my finger into the thread here, and then I'm going to wrap it up, back. So I've created a loop and I'm holding it here in my index finger, and I am forming it by bringing the bobbin back up. That's kind of a key thing. So pull your thread out, insert the finger, you're wrapping on the underside, and then right back up. And then you have this big open loop. I've placed just a few wraps up here. What I like to do, there's different ways to do this, is right away, I take some gathering wraps. And by that, I'm just bringing the bobbin around this loop, probably 2-3 times. I need to come back to the shank to secure it. Here's why you would probably want to take a little bit longer loop than you think, because I'm actually going to, while it's under tension with my left hand, I'm going to wrap back on this loop. I'm tensioning this, not pulling on it, just tension, and I'm wrapping back to where I want to start. Okay. And for me, that's just the barb of the hook. And I'm going to come back, bring my thread to where I want to tie off, and it's going to live right there. This is the important part. If you let go of this, fair warning, it's liable to just start twisting up. I'm going to use a dubbing twister tool. There's a lot out there on the market. This one's kind of fun. It's got bearings in it so you can twist really fast. I don't know that that's always a better option. Sometimes I'll just use a hook, or I started with a paper clip and a pen and some washers, you know, when I couldn't afford tools. So there's 2 hooks here, one on either side of this loop, okay? What makes these tools great is when you pull back, it will actually close the loop. So open, closed. That's great. That makes life a lot easier. Plus, the weight of this tool allows me to set it down and manipulate my dubbing and prepare the materials I'm about to use. If you can, practice forming this loop, working it back. Again, it's just thread. We've got our utility blade. I could slice this off and do it again. Forming muscle memory at the vise is going to save you time. It seems repetitive, it seems silly, but it'll save you time in the long run. Big part of a successful dubbing loop is material preparation. We're going to use SIMI seal here, as I mentioned. Fantastic material. And you're going to use a lot more than you did with touch dubbing. You know, touch dubbing was all about using as little as you possibly can. This is just making sure things are very even. So I'm going to start preparing this material by pulling it apart. That's really important. Is we're going to do what's called carding. And you know, with touch dub, you want a little bit of chaos. With dubbing loops, you want your material to be aligned. So the opposite, you want order. I know it's kind of a goofy one, but really all I'm doing here is gripping with my left thumb and index finger and pulling any loose fibers with my left hand, and then just setting them back in a row. And we're just going to do that a little bit here. I think one of the big issues when people get going with dubbing loops is material gets clumpy, and they generally use too much. So if your material is uniform and thin, all you have to do is add a few more wraps. It's no big deal, right? You can make up for it with your wraps. You don't have to have this big chunky dubbing brush or dubbing loop, which, you know, it's essentially a dubbing brush. So I'm pulling these apart, and this will help you maximize your material. You don't have to get, you know, got a little clump in here. Let me get that out. You don't have to go quite as crazy as I am here. I just think it, you know, measure twice, cut once, right? So we've got a nice clump of material. This is pretty long. It is. And there's a few things you can do, you know, especially with this. This is a number 4. I've done this a few times to know that this is a long chunk of material. Think about it going in basically at the halfway point. It's a pretty big leech, right? So there's a few things you can do. Number one, if you feel confident in your alignment of these fibers, you can trim it down here. Or we can insert this into the loop, spread it out, and then trim it, it takes a little bit more skill, a little bit more time, a little bit more finesse, but longer fibers are easier to place into the dubbing loop and spread out. So that's what we're going to do here is I'm going to take about half of this material, and we'll do this in stages. I'm going to grab my tool, make sure the loop is open. All I'm doing is inserting that in the loop, and then I'm closing it so it's not going anywhere. Don't have to wax this, don't have to do anything crazy. This is pretty standard thread. And then I'm going to grab this other half, do the same thing, work it between the thread. Now you've just got this big clump. You can go crazy here. If you want this spread out, you're gonna need to, if you want to maximize your material, you need to spread this out. So, if we were just tying, a body for a streamer that you're gonna wrap hackle on, yeah, you can do that. That would work. But really what I want to do is spread this material out as much as possible. It's gonna look so thin, you're just gonna laugh and say there's no way that's gonna work. But what I'm looking at is this evenly spread out along the thread. And you'll have some wild ones, they'll go crazy, no big deal. And I'm adding tension here with my right hand. I'm closing that loop, and I can still move and manipulate stuff in here in your materials, but it's not gonna fall out. That's what's great. So we talked about this being long. Once you get your material in here, under tension, you can come in, if you have a sharp pair of scissors, you can trim this down if you want. And some folks are even really good, they'll cut a taper right into this so they can start with, a shorter material in the back and work to a longer material in the front. You don't have to do this. I recommend you try it without first for sure, but let's start there. Once I have this under tension, I can start twisting. Again, this has ball bearings. It's kind of fun to, to put a quick twist in it. But the danger there is that you over twist it and then your thread breaks and gets a little bit tougher. As you go, you can comb or Velcro or whatever you like to use here. Don't use too much tension. Again, this is only 6/0 thread. The twists will always start up close to the shank and then work their way back. So don't use as much tension down low. You'll pull too much material out and things can fall apart. All right, we're getting pretty well twisted there. If you can, really all we're doing with this material before I twist it is trying to get rid of any clumps. I will comb this out once it is wound on the shank. It's just a lot easier, it's a better product. I'm just trying to get rid of any clumps. Bodkin works excellent for this. All right, once you got that, now I mentioned, that's still twisted, and hopefully it's not gonna untwist, that you can use your rotary function here, and we'll do that. Why not? 2 half hitches, bring this guy up, and I'm just gonna grab tension here. You can undo it, you can grab it with hackle pliers if you want, but this will allow you the ability to work that material back as you wrap forward, which is, it's just gonna end up looking better. Just take your time. I like to stop every couple of twists and make sure everything's aligned. You can wet your fingers and work that fiber back like that if you want. A lot of ways to do this, but the core technique stays the same, forming that loop. You don't have to have a rotary vise to do this. You don't have to have, a fancy dubbing spinner. Like I said, I started with a paper clip and some weights, and I got by just fine. Once you've reached your bobbin, you need to secure this just like any other material. I'm gonna add 3 wraps on the back side on top of the thread and 3 in front to really lock those in. Grab my scissors. And then I always like to wrap down on where I finished off, give it a little thread head, do a little whip finish here. Trim it, brush it, make it buggy. And this is how I would, you know, create a buggy leech style body. It just gives that material a lot of life because it's sticking up. It's not wrapped too tightly. You're gonna get a lot of movement in the water with this. And this is where dubbing loops really shine, is they give you the ability to use a dubbing or a material in a different way than you could before with just touch dubbing. So we applied a lot of material very quickly, very evenly there. And even though this is a, you know, just one part of a fly, there's no tail here or any legs or anything like that, I would probably still catch some fish because this is a good looking material tied on with a dubbing loop. Let's do one more real quick. I want to show you, you know, if you're not tying that leech style, but you want a little bit more tighter wrapped body, say you're tying the body of a streamer, you know, maybe it's a dungeon, maybe it's a circus peanut, whatever it is. Let's walk you through that. And I want to show it to you without the rotary option too. Start your thread. Again, we're pulling that thread out more than you think you need because we got to wrap back on it. Insert the finger. Bring that bobbin all the way back up to the shank, give it a few wraps, and then we're going to do those gathering wraps. 1, 2, 3. I'm just going around and then back up to the shank. Now I'm going to reorient this loop to the back half of the hook. It makes it a lot easier to wrap back on. Under tension, I'm not pulling it. Wrap it right back where I want to start. I'm at the barb there, and then I'm going to come back to where I'm going to tie off. Before I let go of this tension, I'm going to grab a tool. The weight is a huge part of that tool. I think folks overlook. The weight keeps things from falling apart. A little half hitch here, save our work. And for this, I'm going to use MFC's CHUB dub. It's such a fun dubbing. It's got a great name, obviously. Vivid colors, a little bit shorter than SIMI seal, and it's a fairly dense dubbing. You're not going to need nearly as much as you think. This is huge. There's still prep time involved. And, you know, I was just thinking about this. I think a lot of people assume that a dubbing loop is faster. And there's just plenty of time you got to still spend making sure things look good. So you can twist dub, you know, if you really master twist dubbing, it could be just as fast, you know, but I will say a dubbing loop makes a wonderfully durable fly. So we got a bunch of dubbing in there, and you can see this is a little bit shorter than that SIMI seal. Important tip when you're doing dubbing loops. I see this happen to folks where, and this is another thing where I think people think they need dubbing wax and they don't. You just need to refine the technique a little bit, identify the problem. I'm just gonna use half of that. When you're working with a dubbing loop, hold your loop level and horizontal. If I open this loop, it's gonna fall out. Yeah, of course, you know, that's how it works. It's gravity. All right, once you've got your dubbing loop loaded up, again, I'm holding it horizontal. I'm just gonna use my thumb and index finger to separate these fibers. I'm trying to get rid of any clumps. This is a much more dense material, and it looks really thin, but once we get the twist on, this is going to really bulk up. All right, ready? Twist. I twisted a lot. I don't want to twist anymore because I know I've done this enough that this thread will break if I go any more. So we're just going to use, you know, regular winding. We're not going to use a rotary here. The big trick is keep this under tension at all times. You can pass it to yourself if you want, whatever you need to do. I'm going to leave this attached to the dubbing loop tool as we wrap. And we're just taking touching wraps up to create a streamer body. You can do this for nymphs. You just have to use the right dubbing. You just have to use the right amount because you can see how fast that bulks up. It's wild. And it makes for a great fly, super buggy, super durable. But you can overdo it very, very, very easily. And this is great for an underbody, for something like a dungeon. Maybe you're gonna wrap some schloppen on top of this or some hackle. Tip, when you have a thicker dubbing loop like this, you need to really make sure that this is secure. A lot of people lose it right here. And I'm never taking tension off of this, even when I'm passing it back and forth on the dubbing tool. I'm always keeping the loop under tension. I go back and forth a few times, come in close, trim it, and then I cover it up. Don't worry about getting so close with your scissors. I mean, you're gonna wrap over it anyways. So we're gonna just do a little whip finish here. Okay. And you can wrap hackle on top of this. You can comb it out. You can do what you want. Really nice uniform streamer body with a dubbing loop.
Next up on the docket is folding dubbing to create streamer heads. This is one of my favorite techniques. It's honestly a little bit easier, I think, than twisting or dubbing loops. It's pretty straightforward once you have the right materials and the right tools to do it with. First though, let's talk about why. And you know, you could absolutely tie, and I know a lot of other people do, use dubbing loops to finish flies. It ties a great fly specifically in the round style. That is, if you rotate your fly in any direction, the head looks the same. Folded techniques give us the ability to do two-tone flies. So if you've got a dark color on the top and a light color on the bottom, kind of like your classic baitfish pattern, this is probably how you're gonna do it, especially if you're working with dubbing. You can also mix other materials in here. Sometimes I'll tie a fly with deer hair on top, kind of like a dungeon head, and then a soft dubbing on the bottom that gives it kind of a chin or a belly. Kind of a hybrid. I believe in showing fish something different all the time and experimenting. You know, sometimes it's a bit of a shell game to figure out what's working, but as part of the fun of it is seeing what works in your water and for your fish. So folding dubbing in a streamer head, we need to get the right dubbing. You're like I said, your dry fly dubbing is probably not going to work here. You want something that is scaled to your fly. And, you know, we hit on this a little bit with dubbing loops where you can actually trim the dubbing once it's in the loop to match the length you need. Tapers are very important. If you are, you know, if you like aesthetics, then you will pay attention to tapers and not just throw whatever material you have at your fly. Understand, you know, if you're tying a huge pike fly, you're gonna want a longer dubbing. A short dubbing is gonna look kind of silly, honestly. And vice versa. If you're tying a trout streamer, but you get some big, mega, super long dubbing for the head and you don't trim it, it's gonna look disproportionate. And I want your flies to look good because it feels good when you whip finish a fly and you're like, man, I can't wait to tie that on and fish it. So just be conscious of that. You know, again, hate to, you know, not trying to plug it too much. You can go through all the different MFC dubbings. We have an entire video on it. It's linked down below. There's tons of great dubbing out in the world. whether MFC makes it or not. Like, find something, play with it. Any good shop should let you take dubbing out and feel it. Feel the length, feel the coarseness, you know, check it out, see how you're going to use it, or at least talk to the staff there. You know, they tie flies, they're nerds just like us, and it's a good thing. So, you know, find the right dubbing for the length of your fly, for the volume, the height, all those things. They play in to how it looks. And I would always rather tie the right dubbing in from the get-go than try and trim it and make it look right afterwards. It's so much extra work on the back end. It's easier to goof up. Rather just start with the right tool for the job. As with the other techniques, I do want to hit on thread really quick. This one's a little bit more freeform. You know, you can use the same thread you're tying the streamer with. I don't know that there's really a huge advantage to using something really strong and thin like gel spun versus something that's, you know, maybe super thick and wide like 210 or, you know, or power thread or whatever, you know, big fly. Yes, it's nice to have, you know, more coverage with your thread as you spread this material out, but you're going to put more than one wrap down. You know, a lot of other techniques, I'm very picky about thread. This is one of the few I'm actually not. So dealer's choice. Use what thread you like to use and tie some good flies, because as long as, you know, you don't have to add tension here with dubbing, you just have to secure it. We're not going to use any adhesives. We want this material to flow. As long as it holds for the comb out at the end, I think you're golden.
If you've got dubbing loops down, there's a lot of things that transfer over, especially with preparation of material here when we're folding dubbing in to either make a streamer head or a whole baitfish body, which is what we're going to do right here. We're using the wide gap streamer. This is a number 1, and this is, first of all, love this hook, love an Aberdeen bend. We're going to use the same thread we've been using throughout this, just 6/0 black. We don't need to add tons of tension with this technique. We just need just enough, right? And I've always been of the as light as you can get away with thread, because I, like many tyers, have lived in that crowded hook eye world that just drives you mad. So to do this, to create these bodies, we're going to use MFC's Arizona dubbing. This is the Crystal Minnow hair. And this is a pretty long dubbing, which is what you want. You need at least a medium to long dubbing for these techniques. It just is going to give you a lot more to work with, and it's just a lot easier to handle. If you went through, like I said, if you went through the dubbing loop program here, you know this. We're carding this material, we're pulling apart and aligning it. And I'm going to use a little bit less. The trick here is when you're doing a two-tone body, you don't want to use too much at any one spot. Sometimes I'll use a comb to get through some of the clumps here. And I just want to build this minnow body by accumulating stacks. We'll call them stacks here. And once I have this aligned, I'm going to find the midpoint. I'm going to lay it down right where my thread is. And I'm just going to do a pinch wrap. Really pretty simple. I'm not going to add too much tension as I wrap because it's going to push the material away from me. You see that? So I'm going to come in with light tension. Keep that material pinched so it stays on top of the shank. 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you want to start with. And then I'm just going to fold this back. And you can either wrap on top of it or wrap in front of it. If you're really trying to eke out every bit of bulk, every bit of volume from this material, wrap in front, not on top. I'm not too worried about that. We'll do that up at the head. the back, the rear sections, I'm not too worried about. I'll wrap right on top of. We're gonna comb this out at the end. I'm gonna rotate this. I'm gonna use a lighter color. This is why we do the folded technique, because it gives you this tall profile that you can either do one solid color or you can do these two-tone colors that are just a lot of fun, and they're really natural looking. If you look at a lot of bait fish out there, they have two tones. You know, a lighter color on the bottom, darker on the top. So, you know, it's part of this sport is imitating, and that's what we're after. This has some nice dubbing clumps in it just to give it a little bit more volume. I'm going to comb that out real quick. And I'm trying to match the same volume of material I used on the top. Certainly don't want to use more. Sometimes I'll use a little bit less. That's not a big deal. Because if I use more, it has a tendency to flip and we lose that keel action out of the bend of the hook. So I'm just going to set this in. This is important. Try not to hurt yourself or stab yourself. These hooks are very sharp. Same deal. Find the midpoint. And we're just going to lay that down, loose wrap, 3, 4, 5, whatever you like. I generally am moving the thread up the shank towards the eye here before I fold it back. Take your time, don't rush this part. Again, we'll comb it out. And then I wrap on top of those forward wraps. That's an important concept. And then I'm going to jump my thread forward. And you can already see this is going to form a nice minnow body. Bit of a mess, but as long as it fishes well, I'm not worried about it being messy. That's what fly tying desks are for. All right, on to the next stack. Same deal, I stay pretty consistent. Sometimes you may want to incrementally increase the volume of material, but generally I think most of us tie flies with too much material, so less than you think. Okay, we're just gonna go, I'm gonna space this out, really hope this fly moves a lot. And again, this is just demonstration. Moving forward gives me that taper, because if I stack everything there, it's gonna be really uniform. So I want to move forward here, find that midpoint again, and wrap on that. Okay, great. This will all blend in. We're going to go to our belly color, pull these apart, line them up. I should have done this ahead of time, but I really wanted you to see the process. If I'm tying a bunch of patterns like this, I'll sit and prep all these materials. I have a little like foam caddy that's kind of nice. I can just sit these down into, and makes life pretty darn easy. You just grab and go. Pinch wrap here, wrapping forward again, folding back and wrapping on those. So really, really nice and secure. These bottom wraps will look crazy to you until you get it out of the vise. You get those jaws out of the way. And then we're gonna go up towards the head. I'm gonna do my final wraps here. Again, this is just a demonstration fly. Certainly it might not make it into any bins or any boxes, but I wanted you to see this process. And I'm gonna use a little bit more material for the head, or at least the shoulders, whatever you want to call it. And again, I'm just prepping this material, just pulling it apart. This is not voodoo. This is very repetitious once you get the technique down. Set that in there, find your midpoint, pinch wrap, wrapping forward here. If you have to stop and realign those fibers, that's okay. Take your time, wrapping forward, and then folding back. And I'm just gonna put one wrap on top, 1 or 2 there, and we'll let that breathe. Okay, I'm gonna grab the belly material. This one's a little bit livelier. It's got a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more, not as much flash. All right, we're gonna set that in, lay it in midpoint again, same deal. Fold or wrap forward there, and then fold it back. And a fly like this, you know, if you're not using any sort of head or a mask or cone or anything, you're just going to build up a thread head and then tire off and probably coat it with an adhesive, a UV, whatever you like to use. Probably stick some eyes on there if you're into that. I know that's a hotly debated thing, whether eyes are actually important or not. I like how they look. Whip finish, trim it, flip it, comb it. That's the next thing. If you've never used one of these, you can use a Velcro thing or not. If you're tying these long streamer bodies, there's probably no better tool than this. And it's the simplest thing. MFC has them. Hold your vise because it will comb through all that stuff really fast. And that taper is just going to come together. You would never know looking at this thing unless you looked really close at my thread work underneath. I probably, in hindsight, probably would have picked a different thread color than this. And you can see I goofed a little bit there. I didn't spread that material out as well as I wanted. But you pull this together, you've got a really nice tapered body. Folded dubbing technique. Another instance where you may want to work with a folded dubbing technique is when you're working with dumbbell eyes or, you know, any sort of weighted eye, and you can still do a really cool two-tone technique using this to split, but there are some intricacies we need to handle here. And let's start with some SIMI Seal Mega Dub, and we'll try to do a two-tone. The Mega is a little bit longer than the standard, pretty buggy stuff though. It's nice and dense. Same process we've been using is pull this stuff apart, align the fibers. You can also twist dub here, you know, if you're working with one of these, but you're going to get one color, right? You're not going to be able to get that two-tone look. So don't go too crazy behind, but we need to build the foundation, the shoulder of this fly. And we want to work our thread pretty much right up against the backside of your dumbbell eyes. And we're going to set that right down, find the middle. That's what we've been doing. And I'm going to put 2, 3, 4, however many you like right there. And you can see that dubbing is lined up right with the backside of those dumbbell eyes. I'm going to put a few wraps just in front. You can wrap on top of this stuff. The goal generally when you're doing this technique is volume. You don't want this as sleek and tapered and worked back like this baitfish pattern. You want volume, and it's going to look wonky as we get going, but we're going to comb it all out so that this thing has some water disturbance, some displacement in the water. Underside. Okay. I'm actually going to leave, just because of the way this is playing right now. You can wrap on that middle. Again, I would prefer to not build up too much thread there. We're going to use a little bit different color. Do a little classic black and brown. Grab some more of this Mega. And we're just, I mean, that's the name of the game here, is just pulling material apart, setting it up for how you want to use it. Kind of like prepping ingredients before you cook, right? So we're pulling this apart, lining it up. Probably want to get a little bit more in there. And this is a fun thing you can do. You can mix and match materials. A lot of times I'll use a deer hair on the top and a dubbing on the bottom. and you get this really unique movement out of those flies, you know, and or at least they stay very oriented in the water if you're getting too much buoyancy from your deer hair. Okay, find your middle point. And here's the trick, loose wrap, and then I'm gonna pull my bobbin towards the eye, and that's gonna cinch this dubbing right up against these dumbbell eyes, because I don't want a gap there. A gap is doesn't look great here. You can even come around and do a gathering wrap if you want. It's not gonna hurt anything. Okay, flip it. Looks crazy. It doesn't look good right now, I know, but remember, we're gonna comb this thing out. Imagine a really cool, sexy streamer body behind this. Let's do right on top of the eyes, and then we'll stack one right in front as well. This is gonna be a 3-stack head. Pull these apart, line them up, try to go warp speed here for you. Set on top. Downside is you go too fast, you lose a lot of material. So I'm setting these right on top of the eyes. My thread is on the back side. I am crossing over to the front. 1, 2, bring my thread underneath. Crossing front to back, 1, 2, and an X. Then folding up, and I'm putting some wraps. Same thing, crisscross here, but I am folding that material back and putting 1 or 2 wraps there. And that maintains the material orientation to work backwards and keeps it from creeping too far forward. The underneath is a little bit tougher. Generally, I do not put, and I'm curious to hear what you guys usually do, but I generally do not wrap the same way on the underside. I usually just fold it under because otherwise it's just too bulky, doesn't look natural. One thing I also do on these heads is sometimes I'll trim this material in half, especially the Mega. I just like the underside to be a little bit shorter. I don't think it needs all that crazy volume, or you can use, you know, standard semi-seal, of course, is a great length for this. But here you get the density without tons of crazy length. I'd prefer it to be a little bit longer on top. Lay this in. My thread is on the front part. So I'm just going to bring my thread loosely across. Don't lose your marker like that. Loose wrap here. Loose wrap, 2 loose wraps, 3 loose wraps, 4, and then you can start adding some tension here. This one I'm just going to pull down. I have enough wraps there. I just want to make sure it is oriented correctly. If you're going to, you know, really add that crisscross, just do it on the 1 half, on the back half. And then what I'm going to do is fold here. I'm actually going to try and wrap on top of that fiber, just a few, to keep it oriented rearwards, because it needs to get over those dumbbell eyes. Okay, we didn't really, had a little bit different problem on top. Okay, now grab that last chunk. I really like this colorway. This is Canadian black semi-seal, and it's got like green and blue and red in there. Looks good. This doesn't need to be any more dense, I don't think, than the others. If you want it to, it can. The problem is you go too dense, you can't pinch it with your thread, or you can't, you know, secure it as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll use my thumbnail here. I'm going to come in and kind of spread that out, make sure I've got a nice even spread before I put a few more wraps in. Same thing on the top. Flatten that out. We don't want it to favor one side. And you can wrap over this if you want or not. I generally do, or just put a few wraps on it. And then we need to come to the underside, finish that up. Same thing, less material. going to cut this in half again, chop these up, pull these apart, align them. I don't want them to look cut, you know, I just want them to look shorter. And I twist and roll. You can see me doing that, and that just helps me gather these up before I tie them in. Lay those down, loose wrap, right down to the eye. 3 or 4, and on here I'm wrapping rearwards. I want to wrap back. I don't want to crowd the eye because I need to fold. I'm going to use my thumbnail, flatten, and I'm working that material back, actually, making sure I'm not crowding the eye. This is, I think the management part of this is actually the tough part. It's not working with the material. It's just managing what goes where, when, how, and not crowding the eye at the end, which I have done just a teeny bit. Hopefully everyone forgives me. Welcome to the club, right? That's just how it goes. All right. Okay. Now, here, because I have a little bit less room, I use a whip finish tool. Just helps me control where that thread goes at the end. 6 turns, because I like number 6. Tied off. I'm gonna grab this comb and we're gonna get to work blending those stacks. Man, that's a good color. that is just a cool color. I picked the baby blue eyes because why not? I don't know, kind of fun. Something different, makes it easy to see. And that is how you get a really cool stacked dubbing head that blends together, doesn't look too many gaps. It's all about taking your time and using your thread to work it into those gaps. And I think this, if it were attached to a streamer body, would work pretty well. So pretty cool. Hope this helps you tie some cool, sexy looking flies.
All right, we've made it through 3 techniques that I think are going to take your work with dubbing to the next level. We talked about twist dubbing, that foundational piece that's gonna find its way into dry flies, nymphs, and streamers. It's gonna chase you around in all your fly tying forever, and you can continually improve it. All these things can be practiced and improved upon. Pay attention to how other tyers do it, whether it's your friends or other instructors or people doing tutorials. There's always more to learn. We also covered dubbing loops. Dubbing loops are, I think, fun, misunderstood, flashy, and great. They save you time, they tie great flies. Your thread's gonna break, like I said. This is the way it is. Welcome to the club there. But you'll learn, you know, what you can get away with thread tension and how much to spin it. Don't worry, stay with it. It's a lot of fun to use, and you can tie some cool flies with that. We also hit on folding, dubbing back for streamer heads. And this is, I'm excited to see, hopefully, some of these flies you're tying, because you can work all these together if you want. You can do a lot of different things. You can combine that, you know, dubbing loop body with a folded dubbing head. Again, these are just 3 of the techniques you can learn along the way. This is step 2. I think there's some more advanced stuff we can hit on, maybe have some MFC fly designers walk you through those in the future. I'm excited to, you know, learn from those guys as well. I love learning new ways to do different stuff. So if you've got questions, let us know. I hope you all practice these and, you know, grab some dubbing and learn something new. Have fun at the vise. Remember, that's the whole point.